Hey, sounds wonderful.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Other Side of Addiction podcast. I am your host, Al Richards. And as I say at the beginning of every show, we got a really good show for you guys today. Our guest today is Susan Peterson, and we're going to be talking about how she lost her son to an accidental overdose. Now, I met this beautiful lady at a family support thing that the DEA, Salt Lake DEA, was actually holding up at the Marriott at the up by the University of Utah. And they were going around the room and asking everyone to share their story, just a little bit. And Susan got up and started sharing a little bit of her story, what has happened to her and her family. And it really touched my heart. I knew immediately, as soon as we had a chance, I was going to go over there and talk with her to see if she'd be willing to come on and share her story. And here she is. And I'm so grateful to have Susan on the show with me today. Susan, thank you for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Al, thank you. It's an honor to join your podcast. Thank you for asking me.
Oh, absolutely. And and thank you for doing what you're doing. You are a co-founder of the Sobriety Foundation,
Yes.
and you shared a little bit about that too when you got up to speak. And that is so cool that you do that. That you work on bringing funds in to have a scholarship to help individuals get into a place, because there's so many people out there really, and I think society does not believe this, and they're going to start believing it because we're going to continue to push. A lot of these individuals want help, right? And they just don't have a place to go. They don't have the means. And to be able to have something like what you do is just amazing. So thank you again for everything that you're doing for the recovery community.
You know what? I, along with my board and all of our donors, I mean, I can't take all of the credit. I have so many people believing in our cause, people that have a passion for sober living, knowing that if they do go to sober living, their chances of staying recovered go up 50%. And, that was one thing that my son did not do, because he felt like after he got out of the initial rehab that he was fine. And he'd go back to the same job, the same friends, the same environment, and he wouldn't make that change. And of course, he would go right back to doing drugs. So I just really feel like that this is a really, really important step of the recovery process, and it is not covered by insurance, which that makes me so sad. Usually, if they don't get a scholarship from us, they have to go back out on the streets because they have exhausted every avenue of revenue in their life, and parents don't want to give them money, friends don't, family has had it with them because they've struggled with addiction, and they've borrowed from them and taken from them, and so by the time they get to us, they're pretty humble. And Al, like you said, nobody wants to be addicted. You get to the point in life, and you hate being addicted. It's just an awful thing to have to fall back on this crutch every single day. And so I mean, we're just a small portion of the recovery process, but I think it's really big in working them back into society and helping them out.
Yeah, and I liked how you explained that, Susan. I went to a neighborhood protest a couple years ago because a sober living was coming into the neighborhood. And it was like a lynch mob. I mean, seriously, it was like a lynch mob. And it was here in West Jordan, where I grew
Yes.
up, where I actually live right now. And some of the remarks that I was hearing from the people, they wouldn't listen to what was being told to them, right? They had already had their mind made up that these
Sure.
individuals were the worst individuals that could ever come into their neighborhood. And it's like they were throwing bricks and torches, and it's almost like they were coming after Frankenstein. That's what it reminded me of, is the old Frankenstein movie, because they were coming after the monster and not even opening their ears to
You
listen.
know, so sad, because we work with about about 25 sober living homes in the state of Utah. We are only in the state of Utah. That's about all we can do, because what we like to do is we like to go in our sober living homes. We like to make sure that they're licensed and accredited. We like to see where our scholarship recipients are going to be staying. We like to meet the person that is running the home. We like to meet the house manager. And then when we put them in a sober living home, we do, they stay in contact with us the whole 2 months they're in there. Plus we check up on them after 6 months and 12 months to see how they're doing. This story that you're telling about people fighting sober living homes, almost every home that we go in, we hear that. It took them forever for the neighbors to feel good about them being there. But then once they get there and they see that they're some of the most wonderful, humble, amazing, hardworking people, then they love it. They love them being there, and they don't understand that if you are in a sober living home, you are randomly drug tested, alcohol tested. So it is a super safe environment for the neighbors. So and if they are, if they get a dirty test, then they're not in the sober living home anymore. So they have to follow rules. They have to go to NAAA meetings every day. They have to be looking for a job. And most of our people, by the time they're out of the 2-month scholarship that we give them, they have a job. 90% of them have a job, and they can start paying for sober living on their own, which gives them a huge amount of confidence that they can finally pay for themselves and take care of themselves. So, and a lot of them remain in that sober living home that we first put them in, because what we do is we have them fill out this extensive application so that we can see where they will fit best in the sober living homes that we have. So we kind of fit the scholarship recipient to the sober living home where we feel like that they're going to do the very best. And so yeah, it is so sad, Al, that people fight this. And you know what? The thing about it is education. They're undereducated about it. They are that's it. And the fear of that, of not being, I mean, because I was in the same place. I was so uneducated about addiction. I mean, I've just thrown myself into it during our son's addiction, and then after he passed away, I've learned so much more. I wish I would have known this knowledge before, when he was here. It would have been a lot better for him, and of course a lot better for me. So
yeah, I would have to agree with that, because I did a lot of the same stuff, right? I don't want to sound like I'm just picking on those people, right, that was there with their pitchforks and torches, because I've gone downtown before and made my comments under my breath about the addicts and the unsheltered down there. Now that I am in the recovery community and have been coming up on 3 years now, I've learned so much, and I've had the freaking honor and the privilege to sit down with these people who have been in that lifestyle, and to hear their stories, right? And to see what amazing people that they are. And they have educated me. Having a show like this every single week, I get to learn constantly. And I've really opened up my mind a lot more. And I really, really do believe we need to get to a point when someone we love goes through recovery, the family goes through recovery at the same time. Because if not, and they come out, we're putting them right back in the same toxic environment. Yeah, and I'm not talking just them going to the same type of friends. I mean, if we're putting them back into a home, whether it's with parents or their wife or husband or whatever it may be, and they don't understand it, the same cycle starts again, right? It's that I used to tell my wife when she was in the depths of her addiction, it's like we constantly get on the same hamster wheel. It never stops. Yeah. We'll jump off here and there, but then we jump back on to go through the same things again. And it was that way for 8 years. It was nonstop.
Right. Well, addiction is a family disease. You're right, Al. All of us are in it. The resources that they have out there now for families. I have a really totally amazing person on my board, Terry Olson. She was at the DEA conference with me. She sat by me. You probably heard
Yes.
her story about losing her son. She has this family support group called Changes, and I have sent so many people there. So that they can learn how to not enable their kids and how to set boundaries and how to, and it's a great program. Changes is a wonderful program. I know that USARA has family groups, and I know that Odyssey House has family groups. And so there are a lot of resources out there that wasn't there 12 years ago when I lost my son.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way. We still have a long way to go. Especially, and you were there at the DEA conference and learning about fentanyl. Wow, so scary what is coming into our state. I'm so afraid for my grandkids. But the key is, I feel like, is to educate them, is to educate everybody about what is coming in and the horribleness of it, and we're going to lose a lot more loved ones in the
Yeah.
next little while. I mean, it's scary. It's just coming in, and it's going to take over, and it's a really scary deal. So people, I feel like, really need to educate themselves on addiction.
Yep. I agree. And that brings us to really towards your son, right? Because at the beginning of the show, we talked about you lost your son to an accidental overdose. And the majority of the lives that are being taken right now because of the fentanyl, that's exactly what they are, right?
Yeah.
I've heard voices in the background that it's the addicts. And it reminds me, if you watch the movie Dope Sick,
Oh,
right?
yes.
You
Yeah.
watch the movie Dope Sick. What did they do when people started becoming addicted? They turned around, the Sackler family turned around and said, "Oh, you know what? Let's just blame it on the addicts." So they turned it around. They're doing the same thing with fentanyl. They're going, you
Yeah.
know what? It's not accidental. These are addicts, right? These are drug addicts. So we're
Sure.
going to blame their death on them, not because of what's happening. And it is accidental. I have interviewed enough people, I've spoken to enough people. My gosh, you heard it all over
Yes.
in the DEA conference, right?
Right.
It is accidental. You just don't go online to order something if you're, to, I don't know whether you're getting a vitamin or if your doctor won't refill a prescription, and you go online and you're getting this stuff or whatever it may be. You have no idea there's fentanyl in it. That is accidental,
No.
right? Somebody's giving you a gummy that has fentanyl in it. That's accidental.
Right. And when they said, Al, that it was fentanyl poisoning, oh my gosh, that just resonated with me, because it is poisoning someone. You are actually giving them a pill that you have put in a pill press and put in too much fentanyl, and it's killing them.
Yeah.
I mean, and so you are poisoning them, you're killing them. You're a murderer. You're making these pills, you're not measuring things out. They're coming across the border, and in droves. I mean, you saw, the map of where they're coming in, and
Yep.
how crazy that is, and how they're getting it all from China, shipping into Mexico. I mean, it was just mind-boggling to me. I've been fighting this fight since my son passed away for 12 years. And to know that so many more people are going to be losing their children from this is just the scariest thing.
Yeah. It's real scary. We're losing good kids. I mean, seriously,
Yes,
we are losing really good kids. And it's time that more of us start standing up and speaking our voice.
I
Because
agree.
I mean, you sat at the same table as Dan, right? He
Yeah,
lost his son due to the same thing, and he's fighting it, right? They're going after well, I want to be careful how I say this because Dan's actually even coming on the show here in the next couple of weeks. But you're right. It is murder. It's absolute murder. And things need to start happening to start
Yeah,
changing it, right? Because once people start getting arrested and they start going on trial for murder, maybe people will start thinking twice.
I agree. And the thing about it is when they were saying that kids can get online and buy it, and they give it to them for free. I mean, so that they can get addicted, so they'll buy more. That's what was scaring me. It's like, really?
Yeah.
You know, and so they're killing people. They are murdering people, in the face of greed. And that's all it is. It's just pure greed.
Yeah, it's greed and vengeance, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they educated us where all the fentanyl's coming from, right? And
Right.
I mean, they gave us the whole roadmap, like you said. They know exactly what's happening. And in a way, and this sounds really bad, in a way, they're very intelligent, right?
Hmm.
Because they're allowing us to kill ourselves without
Yeah.
them taking any kind of warfare, right? Without even shooting a gun or shooting a missile. They're allowing us to kill ourselves. And unfortunately, we're allowing this to happen. There are certain
Yeah.
individuals that are allowing this to happen, and enough's enough.
I totally agree. And the whole story with the Sackler family just made me so upset, that because that's how my son got started. He was stealing my husband's Oxycontin. My husband had had a back surgery, and in 2015, and his friends, he was not hanging out with the best friends. He had quit the football team, and they knew that my Oxycontin had just come. They knew that, let's try this. We heard it was unbelievable. Your dad's not going to notice. Take a few pills at a time. And so they started taking them. And my husband finally came to me one day, and he goes, Susan, I am not using all these pills. I think Carson has taken them from me. And so by that time, he'd started out with marijuana, just kind of the, slipping down that slippery slope. And then he started taking these pills, and he got severely addicted. And in fact, we sent him on a nature to a nature camp, because it was horrible what he was doing. He was just, he had given him a truck for his 16th birthday, and he took four of his friends to Las Vegas one night. This is when he was 16 years old, and got some hookers, lined up some hookers, um, and he wasn't old enough to buy beer, so they took him to this Chevron or C store, and one of them stayed down in his truck, and he went in with the other one to buy beer, and the one took off with his truck.
Oh
So
no.
now he's down in Las Vegas, and he's taken three of his friends that I really felt responsible for, and he doesn't have a truck. And so he calls us, of course, because he's stuck there in Las Vegas, and we get him a bus ride home. And that was the first time that I knew we really had a major problem. I could see that he was going downhill quite suddenly. But then we did send him to a nature camp, um, and that was okay. I mean, he went to like 5 or 6 different rehabs in the total amount of his addiction. He was on and off drugs for 10 years. But he had been clean. He had been clean for about a year, and he had an emergency appendectomy. And this was when he was 24. And he called me on the phone, and he said, "Mom, um, I I'm up at LDS Hospital. Um, I need you to come up and be with me." This is like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I zoomed on up there. By the time I got up there, he was on a morphine drip, and I knew right then that it was going to begin again.
Wow.
So, he had his appendix out, and of course they give you some drugs after that to help with the pain for a while. And then he was so desperate for drugs. The drugs grabbed hold of him so tightly that he was so desperate for drugs that he went out on the streets and went to an old drug dealer that he had turned in and got drugs from him. And the drug dealer was, of course, mad at him. And so he laced his drugs. And at that time, fentanyl wasn't out. This was in 2012 or 2011, excuse me. And so they laced his drugs with massive amounts of Tylenol. And so when he took these drugs, it threw him into cardiac arrest.
Oh my God.
And his girlfriend found him in the nick of time, and she called the EMTs, and they got him breathing again. And so he was with oxygen for quite a while. So they got him breathing again, but he had severe brain damage. He lived for 10 and a half months after that. And it was one of the most horrific times of his life. He was in diapers. He had a feeding tube. He had a trach. He went through so much. Al, I can't even tell you what this beautiful 250-pound football player, finally, when he passed away, he was 120 pounds. So I got to see him die inches by inches every day. And it was just horrific. Nobody deserves to die like that.
No.
It was awful. He could never talk again. He could never walk again. And he was in a wheelchair. I took him out every day in his wheelchair for walks. He was had severe, of course, brain damage. So he atrophied, his muscles atrophied, his feet and his arms and his hands, and it was just awful to watch. So that's the image I see every time I feel like when I'm in the dregs of Sobriety Foundation, and I feel like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. I mean, I'm supposed to be retired, and I'm working harder than I've ever worked before. And then I picture my son suffering, and I don't want anybody else's loved one to have to suffer like that. And I don't want any parent to have to see that, or sibling or grandparents. I mean, it affected everybody in our whole family. I have 9 brothers and sisters, and 65 nieces and nephews, and they all were, they all come and visited him in that 10 and a half months and saw the agony that he was going through. And it was not a pretty picture.
Yeah. I can't imagine being a parent. I get emotional just thinking about it, because I have 2 beautiful daughters, right? And I just couldn't imagine watching that happen. I mean, I'm just thinking of how I would react on my end, right? Even though I've not lived through it. The anger that I would have. I mean, I know me. I would want to go rip somebody's skull right off the shoulders, right? I mean, literally, I would want to.
We had the phone records, and we knew it was a Hispanic name, so we knew who it was. But by the time, and he knew that what he had done to my son, and so we weren't able to contact him. I mean, my husband felt the very same way that you did, Al. He wanted to go after him. He wanted to fight these guys. And I just kept telling Mike, is it really going to bring him back? Is it, what are we going to get from this? Plus, the cartel are so evil. I had to think about my other kids and my grandkids, and I was afraid. I was scared. I just didn't want to pursue that. I just felt like, what we can do now is we can try to get our son better, which we tried everything that we possibly could to get him better, but it was just too little, too late. The brain was just, like I said, severely damaged. We just weren't able to even heal him very much at all.
Yeah. Yeah, that just breaks my heart. I mean, I'm hearing more and more of these stories, and Susan, again, thank you so much just for even wanting to come on and be vulnerable and talk about this, because sometimes I have a hard time getting people who have been on the other side on the show, right? To talk about, because I mean, it is right. They're bringing their pain back up, and I get it. And I I've said quite a few times on the show, it's a little different when it's your spouse, because you can do what you can for your spouse, and there can be some separation. However, when it's your child, I think that's a whole different ballpark, because this is you, right? That's a part of
Right.
you. That's your DNA. That's someone that, especially for a mom, right? You grew this individual. You gave birth to this individual. You mothered this individual. And I've heard of so many moms like even blaming themselves for all the stuff. And I know of another individual who lost her son 2 years ago, and she's still bedridden after 2 years, right? It destroys everything and everyone around, just like you said earlier.
It is the truth. And Al, the first year that I lost my son, that's when we started the Sobriety Foundation. He passed away in January, and a group came to me that was in recovery, and they wanted to start this sober living. And I was so, oh my gosh, so comatose. And you go through so many different stages of grief. It's so hard, because you're mad, and then you're sad, and then you're angry, and then you're lonely, and I just felt like, my aunt put it best. She had 3 children, and she lost 2 of them, and she said it's like a piece of your heart is missing, and you can't get that part of your heart back. And that's kind of the way you feel. You just feel like that you're not whole. And I mean, it's been 12 years, and I still feel like that. I still feel empty. There's a part of me that's just totally empty. And I lost a nephew to drowning when he was 2 years old in an irrigation ditch right right by our house. And I saw how my brother and my sister-in-law, I saw the grief, and I saw them go through all these horrible things. And I just prayed to my God, please God, don't ever let this happen to me. Because I mean, I was 12 at the time, and I was, that's kind of when you're into babysitting and you're loving kids. And I just loved this little nephew of mine with all my heart. And so when it happened to me, I thought, I've taken kind of the saying that life doesn't happen to me, it happens for me. Because I have learned so much from losing our son. I can be so much more empathetic towards the recovery community, and towards people that have lost their children and their loved ones. So I have learned so much, Al. It's been a blessing, even though I miss Carson every single day of my life. Things come up all day, every day, and I think it is for most moms. You hear a song, or you see an article of clothing, or you see a food that he loved, or I love to cook, and things that I love to cook for him. I'll be cooking that and thinking, I wish that he was here to sample it. So it never gets better. I don't think it ever will. I mean, I've talked to a lot of moms. I'm on a lot of Facebook groups with grieving moms, and it just doesn't ever get better. But you know what, if I can see, and what has been so healing for me is to see people get their lives back on track. I mean, we have, I know you know Evan Doan, he was there at the DEA conference. Yes. He was one of our scholarship recipients. So we helped get him into sober living. He had lost both parents and he had no way to get funds. And so we gave him a scholarship, and look where he is today. And there's so many other people that we've been able to help. And when people say people can't recover from addiction, I beg to differ, because I see it all the time.
Yeah.
I see people work their program, and they're the most amazing people that I know. And they're giving back to the recovery community and helping them out. That's what warms my heart, is when you see somebody finally get it and finally has a clean mind, and they can help somebody else, be a sponsor or help financially. I just see how that gives them so much more self-esteem, because somebody helped them. So now they can finally give a leg up to someone else.
Yeah, they're paying it forward. I mean, definitely.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you said something here just a bit ago, certain tragedies happen in our lives. And you said, life isn't happening to me, life is happening for me. And they do turn into blessings, even though at the time we may not see it, right? Because
right.
there has been a lot of good things that have come out of someone losing an individual in their life, whether it is a spouse or a child or a mom or a dad, whatever it may be. There's a lot of good things that come out of it. And I have a friend who has been on the show. She lost her son in a drowning accident at one of those wave pool type things, right? He was right next to her, and she's like, literally, it was just within seconds, turned around and he was gone and couldn't be found. And then, and she was saying how she was getting beat up by a lot of people about being a crappy mom, and they were blaming her, and she fell into depression and fell into some addiction herself, right? Because she's drowning her sorrows, which it is definitely pain we don't want to feel, right? We just don't want to feel it. And I remember her saying something that really resonated with me. And she goes, I wasn't doing my son any justice by laying in bed, depressed and drinking all the time. She goes, I'm trying to remember, I think it was 5 years or 6 years, 5 or 6 years old. And she goes, I need to be celebrating the time I had with him and celebrate it every single day, because at least God gave me that time with such an amazing human being, right? Because if I'm sitting here beating myself up, I'm not celebrating his life,
right?
The life I did have with him. And it may sound like it's easy, and I'm sure it's not, because you're going through it, you and your husband, your whole family's going through it. However, it just really resonated with me that, is that something I'd be able to do if that happened to me? Could I look at it that way and go, you know what, I got to thank God for the years that was given to me, because this is a special person, right?
I totally believe that. I totally believe that wholeheartedly. I wasn't going to drown in my misery. In fact, the times that I felt Carson the most is when I was doing happy, productive things, like being with our family and doing family things and helping, people through the Sobriety Foundation, and and seeing their growth and seeing what they're doing, how they're going on, and they're starting programs and they're helping other people. That's when I feel him the most. I don't feel Carson when I'm sad. He doesn't want me to be sad. He doesn't want me to wallow in my grief. He was never like that. He was always for the downtrodden. He was always bringing. We live right by a bike path here in Provo, and he was always bringing people, homeless people, off the streets. and off the path into my house and my pantry. He used to go grab tons of food for him. And he just, and then I mean, I'd see him sitting talking to the downtrodden on the bike path. He was out having a cigarette with them or something. He always was looking for people that really needed to a leg up in life. And so that's how I know that when I'm doing stuff like that, when I'm helping people, and to cut down on costs, I answer the phone for Sobriety Foundation. And the stories that I hear of utter devastation in their homes and how desperate they are to help their children get off the streets and to find a home. And when we can do that for them, how grateful they are. In fact, my husband, he said, you know what, Susan, what you need to do is you need to tape these conversations and you need to play them at your fundraiser and let people know how desperate people are to help their children and help their loved ones. And we can only give about 40%. We can only help about 40% of the applications that we get in because the need is so great. The need is so great for sober living. They just, and with housing costs, Al, now, I mean, it's crazy. You can't even find a place to live. And so if we can give them 2 months of free rent and help them get a job, we can give them that leg up so that hopefully they can be off on their own.
Well, and that's what we need, right? I mean, seriously, all of us, whether you even battle addiction or not, and other life challenges happen to us, we need that help. We can't do it alone, right? And to have other individuals out there to be able to reach their hand out and go, here, let me help you get back on your feet. It's amazing, because life is getting tougher, right? Just because of the way, like you said, it's getting tougher to get into a home. I mean, just to even live in a little 900 square foot apartment, you're talking 1,500 plus. And people just don't make that kind of money, right? Everything's going up, but no one's making more money to justify it, right? We're still all making the same amount of money. So actually we're losing money. So, but to have people out there to be able to lend a hand, the system is so freaking broken. It is so broken.
It is.
It hasn't worked. I was educated. I sat down with somebody, and we're probably going to end up doing a show, and I really think we're gonna cause some havoc once we do this show. He really educated me a lot on how the insurance companies work, on how 80%, not all of them, 80% of the recovery communities work, right? Or not the community, the recovery centers. Let me rephrase that, the centers. It's all been designed a certain way, and it's been designed to keep the money flowing, coming in, to keep people, get them out, bring them back in the revolving door, get them out, bring them back in the revolving door. And when go ahead.
Al, that's how come I think that they won't pay for sober living, because sober living is trying to get the addict better. And they're helping them, and so they're not gonna. They want that revolving door.
Absolutely, 100% right. I left there with my head spinning. Seriously, there was so many things going on in my head, and I was angry. I was angry, like when I watched about the 3rd episode of Dope Sick, right? I really started getting angry, going, this is the greed, the corruption that is going on out there. These are freaking individuals. These are lives, right? This is not an empty milk carton that you just toss out in the freaking recycle bin when it's done. There are people who love these individuals. There are family out there that care for them. And it's like, that's what they look at them like. I'm just going to say it. They're a piece of shit. That's how they look. They don't give a shit. And it pisses me off that we look at individuals this way. We're all humans, damn it.
We are. And they're very same. When you were talking about watching Dope Sick, I'd watch 2 episodes, and then I had to turn on like Family Feud or something like that. I was getting so worked up
Yeah.
watching these and knowing that my son, that's the first thing that he got addicted to. I was so upset. I couldn't even listen to it. But then I knew that I needed to listen to it. I knew that I needed to educate myself. So I'd turn back on some episodes and I'd watch him a little bit more. And then I'd get so upset that I couldn't even stand it. I'd just be boiling over with anger.
Yeah.
And because of that, because of, I saw how they worked the system and how they had these beautiful girls go around and try to sell them to the doctors. And it just absolutely just infuriated me.
Yeah.
It was, but everybody, I think everybody needs to see that. I think people need to educate themselves and watch movies like this and series like this.
Absolutely. And I don't know if you've seen Painkiller. So
Yeah.
Painkiller is kind of like a spin-off of Dope Sick. It's a 6-part series instead of an 8-part. I just got done watching that probably a couple months ago, and I found myself getting more irritated, more upset. And I had the honor of having Beth Macy on my show, the one who wrote the book Dope Sick, who actually inspired the series. So Beth was on the show, and she was actually a reporter, right? An investigating reporter. And that's when she started doing this whole thing, and now wrote a book about it. And now the series has happened, and now she's doing all this other stuff. And I got to meet her through a good friend of mine out of New Jersey, Ed Bish, who lost his son to Oxycontin. And it's just crazy. And that's the first time he even ever heard of Oxycontin, right? Never even heard of it until he got a call at work and rushed home. And by that time, it was too late. And
So sad.
it's you learn by watching these series how the whole system is working.
Yes.
And again, these are people who are making billions, not millions, billions of dollars. So if you have $1 billion and you're wanting another billion, how greedy are you? I mean, seriously, right? It's the control. They're buying people off that, and I've not trusted the FDA for years. Then when I saw Dope Sick, I'm going, oh my hell. If anything that says it was FDA approved, I'm like, yeah, right. What else is inside this? Because I'm sure you're manipulating something.
Right. I totally agree. And that's why, just like you said, we've got to educate ourselves. We've got to look into things. We've got to, I hear so many times when people just say things, and I just think, where did you find that out? So tell me your resources. Or, I have learned so much. And even though I get so angry and infuriated with all of the horribleness that's happening in the drug world, I've learned a lot, and I think that's what people need to do. I think they need to educate themselves. Al, I live in Provo County, and of course, or Provo, no, Utah County, Provo, and of course we're Happy Valley, and people, they're getting better, but they don't like to educate themselves. They don't want to learn about drugs. They don't want to learn about what's coming into our community. They don't want to, I heard so many times when people say that they would love to go around to schools and teach, even the DEA was talking about that they would love to go around the schools and teach, people, and how sometimes people don't even want them to come. They don't want them to learn about what's coming into their community. And I don't understand that. I mean, I have open conversations with my grandkids all the time, especially when we saw that what fentanyl is being pressed into these little Hello Kitty tablets, and that looks like vitamins and all these colorful things that kids, would certainly want to take. We've got to educate people on this.
Yeah.
We're just going to be losing so many more lives if people aren't educated about drugs.
No, absolutely. And I don't know if you remember when I got up and I spoke, I mentioned that because again, that's what they talked about is wanting to get into schools. And I've reached out to some of our local high schools here. And I'm just basically being told by the principals, nope,
Yeah.
not at all. Now, I was able to get into one of the high schools and I came in through the back door, right? I was able to teach or share a little bit about my story in front of 2 health classes. They combine 2 health classes. So you're able to get in that way. However, for someone like you and I to come in and do an assembly where we've got every freaking student there and they don't want it. And I know some pretty high people up on the school board here. And I've talked to them about it. And they're like, unfortunately, it's the principal's call. Are you serious? Why is it the principal's call? Why can you not, as the school board, put your frickin' foot down and go, I don't care if you want to do this or not, you're going to do it. I don't get it, just like you.
Also, when my son passed away from a drug overdose, my daughter, she wanted to do something, of course. She was on our board for a while, both my daughters were, and then she took around she made a video and we showed it at last year's speakeasy fundraiser. And it was a picture of kind of Carson's life and how he was just excelled in every sport and done it. She just kind of went and she took it into elementary schools and junior highs, and she had the hardest time getting in there. I mean, and it was during drug week, they she went in and she's, listen, this is what I have. It's only, about a 15-minute presentation. I have videos. I have everything that he went through. And it finally, she quit doing it. She was just hitting her head against the wall. Nobody wanted her to come in. And it was really an eye-opening video once you see, I'm a very visual person, and once I saw what Carson was and what he became by using drugs, not even the same person.
Yeah.
Not even the same person. I mean, you could see his demise and over the years. And I think it would have been very helpful for kids to understand that. And then he ended up in a coma. You don't think it's ever going to happen to you. He didn't ever think it was ever going to happen to him, and it did. This is what happened to him.
Yeah. And again, I don't get it, right? I mean, what was it? I don't know. When was it that they came in? Early 80s, I guess, when they came out with Just Say No to Drugs.
Yeah,
thing.
it was early
And
80s.
so they allowed that.
Sure.
However, now umpteen years later, no, we don't want to hear anything about it. And again, I don't understand it. We are losing. What was the statistic I heard last week? I think 280 something lives are lost daily because of fentanyl poisoning. 288. Add that up.
Well, and even in the state of Utah, Al, we're losing 11 people a week.
Yeah.
A week from overdoses. Yeah. A week, 11 people a week in the state of Utah. And people don't think we have a problem.
Yeah, right. What if there was a serial killer out there killing 11 people a week? Right? Oh, you're going to do something about it then, right?
Oh, absolutely. Or if we were losing planes full of people, and 11 people a week, boy, that adds up. If we were losing, that shut down the airlines.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they so yeah, I don't understand how come people don't think that people that are in recovery or trying to be recovered or in addiction are any different than anybody else.
Right. They're not. And and it's, I tell people when they hear about the show for the first time, and I do some networking and I have my little 60-second elevator pitch. Listen to some of these shows. Listen to what a lot of these individuals went through in their life.
Right.
Because I tell you what, you could be in their same shoes. If you
Oh,
went through what they went through, you could be in their same exact shoes. So
absolutely.
do not judge and say, I don't understand, it's just the drugs. No, it's not the drugs. That's just the Band-Aid. That's all
Right.
that is. It's just the Band-Aid.
I agree. It doesn't discriminate, just like you said. Anybody can get into that pattern. I mean, you can get an injury. I know so many people that, and you saw this in the movies or the series. He had a back injury, and he just, how his life just spiraled down. Anybody can get into this. It's we're not immune to addiction. None of us are. And you know what? There's so many different addictions out there. I mean, people can be addicted to exercise, food, which is a horrible addiction. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to eat. There's so many different addictions out there, but there is such a stigma against drugs and alcohol. I own Chevrons, and do you know how many times a day people come in and fill up their Stanley mugs 2 and 3 different times a day with Coke and Diet Coke and Mountain Dew and Dr. That's a huge addiction. But
Absolutely.
that they don't think that is. So we're all just like, we can't judge. We are all apt to have something in our lives that we just can't control.
Yeah. Yeah. And with you saying that, I want to share something personal. When my wife was in the depths of her addiction, I was at that point still not understanding addiction, where I'm like, just stop, right? Come on. It can't be that hard. Just stop. Why don't you get it? Look what it's doing to your life. Look what you're destroying. She said something to me once. She goes, I'm an ice cream lover. I mean, I'm addicted to ice cream. I love ice cream. It takes me everything I have not to have a bowl of ice cream every single night. Seriously, there's nights I'm sitting down and I'm just going, I want some ice cream. I want some ice cream. And I do it my best not to have any ice cream. That's what an addict's going through, right? When it's like, I need some drugs, or I need alcohol, or I need porn, or I need gambling, whatever it may be. She told me once, she goes, what if I told you you could never, ever, ever have ice cream ever the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Well, I did what a good addict does. I was justifying it. Well, guess what? That's not as bad. It's not as bad as alcohol, right? So I was justifying it. I'm pumping my body full of sugar. Is that good for me? No.
Oh, horrible.
Right? However, so I'm
It
still justifying it.
sure.
So
Sure.
she had a point.
And so all we have to do is just take one little tiny minute and look at ourselves. When we are judging other people, just take a second to think about, okay, let's turn that around. What am I struggling with? What do I have to have in my life every day? And then try to give that up. I
Yeah.
mean, it turns it around on yourself, and then hopefully you have a little bit more empathy for people that are going through these. Plus, it's drugs are and alcohol. It's such a brain disease, and give me more, give me more, give me more, give me more. It's just it's just a horrible thing to have. And like I said, nobody wants to be addicted to drugs and alcohol, and there's usually an underlying cause why they're there. It's either a dual or triple diagnosis with something that they're going through in their lives, where this is what they're doing to take the edge off.
Yeah.
And then they do that for a while, and then they get addicted to it, and then they have even more problems.
Yeah. Well, it slowly grabs a hold of you, and you don't realize it, right? It's like when I share my story of my every Friday and Saturday night cocaine and alcohol, right? It was something that I just did every once in a while. And then the stress and everything that was going on in my life, pretty soon before I knew it, it was every single Friday and Saturday night. And I continued to do it for a total of 8 years, right? Something started out slowly, but then it finally got me. And that's what's happening with so many out there. And you're constantly chasing that same high, and you'll never get it, right? It's
never
like,
get it.
I'll put it this way. the first time that you make love to somebody or have sex, you'll never have that same feeling again, right? You still have a certain feeling, but you never have that exact same feeling ever again, yet you continue to chase it, right? The drugs and alcohol or the gambling or that endorphin, it's you're constantly searching for it. You're constantly wanting that same feeling. And it's never
Exactly.
like it is the very first time, ever, ever.
Yeah.
And that's where it catches us. That's where it grabs us. You said it earlier. That's why people give it to them for free, right? Because
Right.
now it just grabs them just a little bit and starts pulling them in. And before long, I like to use it as eagle's talons or owls because their talons are so sharp and so strong. One talon at a time, and once all of them are in you, man, it's tough to get them out.
It is. It is really tough. I think I really feel like each one of us need to do our part to make this world a better place. That's what life is all about, giving service to others and helping others. And you know what? I have to pull myself so many times a day out of that non-judgmental phase and go to a certain situation with love and empathy. And when I do that, when I kind of turn that around and say, well, maybe that's why they're doing that is because of this. Or maybe instead of saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe that, they can't give up drugs, or I can't believe that they have to have their fifth Stanley Cup of Mountain Dew, well, maybe they really do need that. I mean, I I'm not in their situation.
Yeah.
I can certainly be there for them to give them love and empathy, but I can't pull them out of their certain situation if they can't see their addiction themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. And you said it, Susan. We all have it, right? We all have an addiction. It's there. Just open your eyes because we all have something that
Right.
that we have. And unfortunately, there are just some addictions that are really, really bad and really
Exactly.
take a hold of us. Gosh, Susan, I mean, this has been an awesome show. Is there something that we haven't talked about that you would really like to voice your opinion on?
I just I just think that we really, really need to love humankind. I just love unconditionally. Um, give of yourselves unconditionally. It's so easy to say and so hard to do. But look at a certain situation, just maybe like I said before, just turn it around and maybe look at it in a different way, and give them love and kindness and empathy instead of judging them on what they're doing. Um, you know what I? How many times have we said we would take our own problems back in a heartbeat once you see somebody else's problems? And that is totally the truth. I have a lot of problems, a lot of things that I'm going through in my life, but boy, I have been truly blessed, and I am so grateful for everything that I have. And and i I, and that's what I'm trying to do through the Sobriety Foundation, is give so much more back, because I have been given so much. I have been blessed through my whole entire life. I have amazing family, amazing friends. Um, just look at maybe what you have instead of what you don't have.
I love that you put it that way. That is so very well put. We've all been blessed in a lot of different ways, and really what we have as far as material things, that's stuff we cannot take with us anyway, right? I
No.
mean, I don't have a home. I mean, I don't live in a home. I don't live in an apartment. I live in a trailer. It's just how life has just kind of dealt cards to me right now. I don't plan on staying there. I plan on moving and doing what I can do. However, if I was to die tomorrow, it doesn't matter if I had a house. I still can't take it with me, right?
There you go.
I would
There you
want
go.
what I want is someone to that I could be there, that loves me, that cares about me, that believes in me, where I leave a legacy that my grandkids will remember, that my kids will remember, that people years after I'm gone will still talk about, right? And it's not to put me or anyone else on that pedestal, right? It's not that we're any better than anyone else, because we're not. It's just, what is it that we want to leave? I want to be known of having a kind heart and opening up my arms. And I have a gentleman who I've just become pretty dang good friends with. And I met him at our Healing Utah Success Summit on October 7th that we did. And it was just shortly after I got up and spoke, and we had a little break, and I was walking up the steps, and I see this guy coming down the stairs, and he comes right up to me, and he goes, Al, my name is Joseph Valentine. Pleasure to meet you. And he goes, you really, really touched me with your talk. Thank you so much. And he goes, and I've enjoyed the other speakers that have spoken today. And he just started opening up and sharing his story. He has no family here, and he lives at a sober living in Sandy. And I said, you know what? I'm willing to take you under my wing and be your friend, right? About 3 weeks ago, I invited him on a hike. And I tell you what, it's changed that man's life. Just taking him on a hike, right?
Right.
He thanked me so many times. Thank you for taking me on this hike. I didn't even realize life was like this. And it's just a nice gesture, right? That's all I was doing, is just saying, hey, would you like to get out in some nature? You want to see what I see? And now he's been on 2 hikes with me. And he reaches out to me every once in a while. Good morning. Thank you for being my friend, right? He is so freaking grateful. And
The connections
connections, yeah.
are the most important things in life. And you know what, Al, when you said that, you cannot take anything with you except the legacy that you leave in loving people, and all of the memories that you shared with them. And this guy's going to remember those hikes forever.
Yeah.
Somebody reached out to him, somebody made that connection, somebody give him love and empathy and cared about him. He's gonna remember this forever. And I have I've had amazing parents, and my dad has been gone for over 20 years, and just the legacy that he left behind, because he loved people so much, and the stories that people are still telling me to this day, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. That's all that we can take with us.
Yeah.
Is how kind and how wonderful, and how the connections that you made, and the love that you showed to humankind. That's all we can take. That's all we can take with us and leave behind. That's all we can leave behind.
That's it, right? That is all we can leave behind. I mean, we can leave our house or vehicles or couches or material things to family members. However, they would rather have us than that, right? I mean, seriously, they would rather still have us here than those things.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
Susan, to wrap things up here, a couple questions, and you can either answer one or the other, or combined, however. What would you want our listeners to gain from this show? And what would be your main message?
Love people unconditionally. That's all I want to leave behind. I want you to accept and love flawed people, because all of us are flawed. None of us are perfect. We're all working as hard as we possibly can to live in this world. And of course we make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes every day, but let's try to love people unconditionally.
I love it. And I would just have to say I second that motion, because that's perfect. We definitely all need to do that. we definitely all need to do that, because this world will become a lot better place, right? None of us are any better than the other person. None
No,
of us
we're
are.
not.
And there are certain individuals who have been dealt a pretty hard hand. And
Yes,
there are some people who also have other things. And you think that, they didn't choose to be the way that they are,
no,
and I mean, some of us can make certain choices, but there are certain people who are born in this world who did not choose to be the way that they are, yet they're being picked on and they're being looked at that they're broken or they're different. Man, I tell you what, we're all broken in one way or another. and
we
and,
certainly
and
are.
it takes other people to help mend us, right? Because sometimes we
Yes,
just can't do it alone.
no, we
Yeah.
can't. That's why we need connections like you made with your friend. We need to connect with people and show them that we love them and we're there for them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That
Well,
that
and
was a beautiful story.
uh, thank you. And you guys are doing the same thing, right? You're out there making connections and you're helping other individuals. And yes, there's a handful of you guys that are out there that's doing it. However, look at the lives that you're changing, right? I love that you shared the story about Evan, right? Because now this guy's up at the state capitol, and he's doing his best to make different laws and change things. And this is a guy that probably, if you saw him 10, 15 years ago, you'd go, yeah, what a wasted life, right? And now look what the man's doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Susan, thank you
There's
so
hope for
much.
all of us.
What's that?
There's hope for all of us.
Amen.
I keep
Yes.
I keep thinking there's still hope for me. So,
Yeah. Well,
but
there's
it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast. I just really appreciate this, and I have been listening to your podcast, and it's wonderful.
thank you.
So,
Thank you. Thank you for listening and supporting us, because that's what we need. The more supporters we get, the more it's going to get out there, and our voices will be heard. So thank you so much.
thank you, and good luck with your life, and sending you lots of love and blessings.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. Yeah, it's a new chapter for me. That's for sure. It's pretty scary being 60 and starting all over, right? And
You know what? You're gonna
yeah,
find someone that's just gonna knock the socks right off you. So you're an amazing man, and you have so much to give.
uh,
So you just hang in there, and life will happen the way it's supposed to.
yes, yes. Thank you so much for that encouragement. I definitely needed that. Well, before you sign off, guys, thank you again for everything. Thank you to all our guests, all our listeners, our sponsors. As I say every week, guys, we couldn't do this without you. You guys are the ones that's making this possible. Our growth, we continue to grow. We're coming quick on 3 years this March. Our subscription is going, guys. Please get on YouTube, share it. Please subscribe, like us, let other people know. And remember this: addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.